Alex.
Pa kayo saan?
From Bodensee.
Bodensee. Ilang oras yung biyahe?
3 to 4.
Imagine being 7 months pregnant, getting into a car, and committing to nearly 4 hours on the road
Ilang buwan na yung 7 months?
for one single first-round match in Stuttgart. That was the reality surrounding Alex Eala on April 14th, 2026, when Porsche Arena stopped feeling like a stop on the European clay calendar and started feeling like a gathering place for Filipinos who refused to let their star feel alone. And by the time Leyla Fernandez spoke after the match,
Not gonna go down easy, as you can see. So she's gonna fight. You're gonna have to take the match. So
that 4-hour drive no longer looked like fan devotion alone. It looked like proof that Alex Eala had become something much bigger. This was Eala's Stuttgart debut on the heavy indoor clay of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix against Leyla Fernandez in a first-round clash loaded with shared heritage and real tension. She came into that week working under Sandro Vieni on site. See, with Joan Bosch helping shape the clay adaptation behind the scenes, the entire focus was learning how to survive a surface that punishes hesitation. Then April 14th arrived, and the scoreboard turned brutal fast. Eala lost the match 1-6, 4-6. But the result was only half the story, because what the Filipino crowd brought into that arena gave the defeat a completely different meaning. There is no villain in this story wearing the other color across the net. The resistance here is harder to dismiss because it is built into real life itself. Distance, discomfort, pregnancy, foreign roads, foreign weather, a foreign tournament, and a clay season that has already demanded a painful adjustment from a 20-year-old carrying the hopes of people far beyond the baseline. That is what made Stuttgart so powerful. Alex Eala was not playing in Quezon City. She was not playing in Manila. She was not even playing in Asia. She was in Germany on one of the toughest surfaces in women's tennis, and still Filipino supporters treated her appearance as a moment worth rearranging their bodies, their schedules, and their safety for. One woman, 7 months pregnant, chose nearly 4 hours in transit for the chance to witness one match. Then the stands filled with more voices, more flags, more chants, and the story stopped being about attendance. It became a portrait of what happens when a player stops representing only herself and starts representing home. Start with the most human detail, because it is the one nobody can fake. A 7-month pregnant Filipina fan and her friend drove almost 4 hours to Stuttgart specifically to watch Alex Eala face Leyla Fernandez. That detail was reported across major Philippine outlets on April 13th, and it hit people so hard for one reason. This was not convenience. This was commitment with weight on it. Put yourself in that passenger seat. You are carrying a child. You are measuring every hour of the trip with your back, your breathing, your comfort, your risk tolerance. And you still decide that seeing Alex Eala in person matters enough to make the journey anyway. That is not casual support. That is belief choosing motion. And the reason that story exploded is simple. Everyone instantly understood what it meant without needing it explained. The clips from Stuttgart did the rest. Viral videos showed Filipinos gathering around Eala's arrival, chanting, filming, waiting, reaching for the moment as if the tournament had temporarily shifted its center of gravity. Porsche Arena looked less like a neutral European stop and more like a borrowed home court. Witnesses did not need a statistic sheet to tell them what was happening. You could hear it. You could see it in the cluster of supporters tracking her every movement. You could feel the atmosphere change around one name. That matters because this was not an isolated act from one devoted fan. It was a pattern presenting itself again. First the online waves, then the in-person welcome, then the match day noise. The so-called Eala effect is not abstract anymore. It now travels across borders with actual bodies and actual time behind it. And if you have been watching her rise and sensing that her connection to people was different, Stuttgart rewarded that instinct. Long before the wider tennis world fully catches the scale of it, the supporters who kept showing up already knew she was creating a pull that rankings alone could not measure. April 14th made that impossible to ignore. Now move from the stands to the player herself because the bond only becomes powerful when it runs both ways. In a Stuttgart sit-down interview, Eala said, "I channel pressure into motivation for the passionate Filipino fans create an electric atmosphere wherever I play, making me feel at home even on foreign soil." That is the line that turns a touching fan story into something deeper. She is not merely being cheered, she is being carried. The same people willing to drive pregnant through Germany are also the people transforming a strange city into emotional shelter for her. That is why the support lands so hard. It is mutual. Foreign soil is supposed to feel foreign. That is what the phrase means. But Eala described the opposite. Not comfort because conditions were easy. Not comfort because the match was going smoothly. But comfort because her people found her anyway. And once the match began, that support had to survive the harshest test available, the scoreboard. The first set ended 6-1 for Leylah Fernandez. On indoor clay, against a quality opponent, that kind of opening can bury a match in a hurry. It can also drain the emotional oxygen out of the crowd that spent hours waiting for a breakthrough. Eala did not give them that collapse. The final result was 1-6. 4-6, which means the second set became a fight, not a ceremony, not a surrender, a fight. That distinction matters because fans do not only travel for victories, sometimes they travel to witness character under pressure. And here is where the story reaches its peak, not in a trophy lift, not in a ranking jump, but in recognition from the other side of the net. After the match, Leylah Fernandez said,
She's not gonna go down easy, as you can see. So she's gonna fight. You're gonna have to take the match.
"She's not going to go down easy, as you can see. She's going to fight. You're going to have to take the match." That is the kind of line that changes how defeat is remembered, because now the 4-hour drive means more than sacrifice. Now the chants mean more than enthusiasm. Now the loss itself becomes evidence that the fans were not showing up for illusion. Yet they were showing up for something real enough that the player who beat Eala had to say it out loud. And Fernandez gave another revealing detail when she described the matchup as like playing a mirror image. Shared roots, shared grit, shared understanding of what was on that court. That made the praise land even harder. By the end of that night in Stuttgart, the story was no longer a fan traveled far to watch Alex Eala lose. It was a fan traveled far to witness exactly why Alex Eala matters. Leylah Fernandez is not some passing commentator throwing out polite compliments after a routine win. She is a Grand Slam finalist, a proven tour-level competitor, and a player whose own Filipino heritage gives her a sharper lens than most when she looks across the net at Alex Eala. And she also earned the right to speak on this moment because she was the one who had to close the door on Eala point by point in Stuttgart. So when a player with that resume leaves the court and frames Eala as someone you have to take the match from, the message is clear. Alex is already forcing established professionals to work for every inch. That is authority transferring in real time, not hype from supporters, not projection from social media. Respect from a peer who had every reason to focus on her own win and still made sure the world understood what kind of opponent Eala is becoming. Stuttgart matters because it reveals something larger than one afternoon in Germany. What showed up there was Philippine sporting identity on the move, a diaspora turning a European arena into a cultural meeting point around a 20-year-old tennis player. That is soft power in its clearest form. No campaign, no slogan, just people traveling, gathering, chanting, and making themselves impossible to miss. And that has consequences for the rest of the clay season. As the calendar moves toward Madrid, Rome, and then Roland Garros, every Eala appearance now carries an extra layer. Her matches are no longer only technical tests about footwork on clay or depth off the backhand. They are community events waiting to happen. The next question is not whether fans will show up. Stuttgart answered that. The next question is how loud they can make the next venue feel. Here is the prediction that stands on solid ground. If this level of diaspora support keeps following her through Europe, Alex Eala's toughest clay stretch will also become the stretch that hardens her public identity the fastest. The results will matter, of course, but the atmosphere around those results is already accelerating her into a different kind of star. The truth still has to stay intact. On April 14th, Eala lost 1-6, 4-6 in her Stuttgart debut. The clay transition remains difficult, and the score from that first set did not flatter her. There is no reason to hide that, but what followed gave the loss its dignity. She remained present with the people who came for her, signing autographs, taking photos, and matching disappointment with gratitude instead of withdrawal. That matters. Because fans can accept a defeat when the bond they traveled for proves genuine the moment the match is over. A 7-month pregnant fan in a car for nearly 4 hours. Chants echoing through Stuttgart. Alex Eala saying those fans make her feel at home on foreign soil. Leila Fernandez, after winning, admitting that Eala has to be taken, not waited out, not brushed aside. Taken, that is the full picture. Alex Eala left Stuttgart without the win, but with something harder to manufacture and far more powerful in the long run. Living proof that she carries people with her wherever she goes, and that the people carrying her believe for reasons the sport is starting to understand. If you saw something special in her before this week, this story did not create that truth. It confirmed it. So here is the question: how far would you personally travel to watch Alex Eala play on this clay swing? Madrid, Rome, or even Paris? And what city would you be traveling from? And if that 4-hour drive meant something to you, subscribe and stay with this corner of tennis that recognized the weight of this movement early. This is where the true believers gather when the crowd in Stuttgart becomes the crowd in the next city. If Alex Eala's journey feels personal to you, you already belong here.